welcome to the fourth Behind the United Art Gallery video podcast. Today, far away from the United States, from San Diego, Anton Orlov. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to have you in my darkroom.
It's good, yeah. I mean, in your darkroom. It's the first time I'm in Other Sky darkroom via the Zoom meeting. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I've been a darkroom hermit ever since I was 12. I moved to the United States from Russia. I started photography back there with a grandfather's enlarger and a couple of trays. I learned how to develop and process my own film in about sixth grade. And then ever since then, I never wanted to do anything else other than photography. It's kind of a way of communicating the way I see the world, I think came through more clearly than in any writing or any other art form that I've tried. So after moving here, I attended college, got my BFA from San Jose State University in photography, worked in the field for about a decade for portrait photographers and other outfits. Then about 10 years, I happened to stumble upon this space that I purchased that was before. It used to be a rental darkroom, and now it's my own private space where I teach and practice analog photography, mainly from the 19th century now, because I started going back in time and found myself basically enamored with the first two photo processes that were the most perfect ones, Daguerreotype and Wet Plate clothing.
You started first with wet plate or with Daguerreotype?
Oh, I mean, I was shooting 25 years. I was shooting film. Then I went into alternative processes, and starting about 1999 was my first foray into platinum and gum and cyanotype and all of those. And then in 2013, I took a workshop in wet plate. So that came first to me. But the year before that, I was lucky enough to see somebody make a daguerreotype of myself. It's actually on the wall. Give me exactly 1 second, I'll grab it.
Yes, sure.
And here it is. It's actually made by Rob McElroy.
Oh, wow.
I think you can kind of see it. The daguerreotypes are very tricky because they're made on a perfectly reflective mirror. So we can see our host right there and the lamp. And if you hold it just right, you get to see a beautiful, beautiful image of me standing in front of the school bus that I converted into a darkroom. It's called the Photo Palace bus, and I traveled in it from San Diego to Maine twice and other places across country. It was meant to be a shrine to analog photography because you can do all the research you ever want to spend your time on online. You can Google platinum prints, carbon prints, Van Dyke prints, gelatin silver prints, single transfer, double transfer carbon, bromoil and all that, daguerreotype, tintype, sepia toned, and anything. You can look at those images ad nauseum, but you'll never get an idea at all what they look like in real life, because every one of those prints is a physical object. Carbon print has a beautiful texture, this layered gradation of carbon on a glossy surface. Daguerreotype is a mirror. Tintype is on a piece of metal. Ambrotype is on a piece of glass. If it's colored glass, you can look through it and see a colored negative of an image. There's a tactile interaction that happens between the viewer and an actual work of art that is missing anywhere online or in any lectures. So that's why I build a gallery in the front part of the school bus and a darkroom in the back. So I travel around and show people physical examples of the history of photography through actual prints from before the days of photography, like silhouettes and drawings and camera lucida drawings. through daguerreotypes and up to color printing.
That sounds really cool. So you still do that with the bus, or you did that?
I do that every once in a while whenever I have the funds. I also have to mention that all my funding comes from people helping out and buying my work. I don't have a regular job. This is all I do. So whenever I have enough funds to run this thing, this baby is $1 a mile to drive it. $1 every mile. So I try to do books and workshops, lectures. I did magic lantern shows. It was a lot of fun. And I'll be back on the road once this COVID thing is out. You guys stay indoors and keep safe.
Okay, then I come already to the next question. How did all the COVID stuff, like the pandemic, affect you, your work, your workshops, everything around you?
Well, if I was to be honest, it didn't affect me much at all, other than, of course, my local coffee shop being closed and me not being able to get my morning bagels there. But the only thing was that I saw you sent a question in about those big jobs that I every once in a while do with a high volume thing. That all got canceled. This was going to be the first year where actually all fell through. So now I'm stuck completely on art sales and portrait sales and whatever I can summon. It leaves me with a lot of time to experiment, which I'm getting back to some really neat daguerreotype experiments now. But yeah, those guys said they'll give me about 7 gigs this year. One happened and COVID hit, and that's it. So yeah, that's pretty much the only thing. It really did push me though to think differently about why I'm photographing, because all those portrait gigs, they're great, and that's what really pays the bills sometimes. But photography for me is something that comes from within, something that cannot be really commissioned. All the images that are truly meaningful to me, they come to me in vision that is born within my own brain. So as much as I love doing commissions and portraits, I've been doing portraits for 25 years now. There's something special about seeing a person analyzing all your skill in photography, analyzing the light, thinking of what they want to see, thinking of what you want to show them of themselves, and executing that. But that's a separate art form from having a blank canvas and having inspiration to create something that came from your own vision and put it down to where you're satisfied. That's what I'm doing now, basically. The COVID thing is giving me time for a lot of that.
I think this is also one of the main reasons the gallery started, because I thought like myself, I started a lot of stuff I wouldn't have done before because I wouldn't have not so much time to finish the other stuff. And now everybody has time, and we finally can do what's waiting in our heads to be done, so to say. And
I heard Isaac Newton created calculus during the plague, so we better get cracking. Come up with something really cool like calculus. Which was fun, I will say. I had a little bit of background in chemistry. Actually, both my parents were chemists in Russia. I attended pre-exam classes in Mental University, and when we came here, my first path was to go into biochemistry because, of course, photographer is not a respected profession in most of the world. You gotta work. Artist, what is that? You're gonna be an artist? What? No. Go get a lab coat, get a 9 to 5. Never regretted. Never regretted switch. 97 is when I made that decision that I'll never do anything other than photography in my life. So far, so good.
Yeah, that's a long time now. 97 to today is like, give me more than 20 years, right? Like 23 years.
23, 20, according to calculus. Yeah. Yeah, it's for the first, yeah, I got this space in 2010. So, and that's, and I quit my last photo job right before getting the Photo Palace in 2011. So it's been freelance artistry for 8 years. So far, so good. I think as long as I can pay the rent on this space and make more works, these daguerreotypes are really expensive to make. People contact me all the time. Oh, I'd love that plate. Is it available? They're one of a kind. It takes days to make, years to learn, hundreds of dollars per plate to make, and then they're like, "Oh no, it's $1,200." Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's already half the market value of these things. If somebody else in the world could actually make something like that. Yeah, basically, it's a unique object when you're buying a photographic print from a gallery's wall. Somebody pushed print button 10 times to produce those. After, yes, possibly spending some time actually executing the original photograph and then sitting online and tinkering in Photoshop, and then they press it 10 times and you have a 10 edition limited edition prints. They're still not the original. This is first generation work. There's no Photoshop there's no editing. It's like buying a painting. It's like buying a real Calder sculpture. There's none like it. So
Yeah, that's something I like to shoot. Tintypes is also like you have the one original. Just the daguerreotypes take like much more time to make them, and I guess even much more time to learn how to make them that perfect like you do. And
it,
we're gonna
people,
talk later about that when we look at your images.
yeah.
But
Anytime.
but you know what? I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and we go through the first wet plates. And I guess
Yeah.
we're gonna have a lot of more stuff to discuss then.
Okay. Well, this image here was actually something that brought me out of kind of a bit of a slump. I often find myself using photography to get to the next stage in my thinking. And so I was confined in my darkroom and gallery for months and weeks and by now, and took a self-portrait in this pose. And then a friend of mine who's pictured in this image in front of you saw that ambrotype and not only purchased that one, but said that he would love to have a picture like this of himself. And so the very next day we did that. So that's an 8x10 tintype in my studio, single light lit with a probably a void lined or bed swell. Yes. Yep.
You see a little bit swirl in the background, so I thought
Yeah,
it's
it's
gonna be a
pretty much
petrol.
the camera. I mean, the lens that stays on my camera most of the time on that 8x10. It's a 13-inch, beautiful 3.5 Petzval.
I'm gonna explain to the viewers. You see the tattoos on the body, but they're very light. And that's because the wet plate collodion process only captures blue light. And in the tattoos, I think there's a lot of blue color in there, and that's the reason
Yeah,
they are so faded. That's, I think, the best way to
yeah, and
describe.
on some skin it totally disappears, and on some skin it shows up a lot more, and different inks show up. Like blue ink definitely gets lighter, but like reds and yellows get darker, and sometimes tattoos look really different. Sometimes they don't look at all like anything like themselves. So this was kind of an experiment by my buddy, because he did hear that tattoos just completely disappear, and I said, no, we can show him somewhat. So this was basically a pretty much test plate of the tattoos.
No, it's pretty. You know what I like? I like that you see like the catchlight in the eyes. I also like that it's a nude picture because it shows how vulnerable we are against the
Mm-hmm.
virus, and also like the cloth in the background. It's really a
Yeah, I
beautiful
mean,
image.
I've always admired the work of people like Irving Penn, um, where elements of the studio are shown. That was my big influence in my portrait photography. Um, but yeah, the interaction I think between the model and the viewer via the eyes, I think, is really makes this play kind of more vibrant even than the one that I did of myself, where I'm looking down and it's very, mine is very down. This one is, I think, more hopeful.
Okay, then I'll jump to the next one. Ah, yeah.
This one. So this one, I am going to supply you with another quick image taken at an angle, because in this copy in front of us, it's all sharp and even, but inside one of those black holes that look black here, there's gorgeous iridescent blue. That's deep, deep navy blue that shows up only at a very specific angle. And yeah, this was an experiment, like doing still lifes. If I'm ever bored in the studio, I go out for a smoke and I ask myself, what can I do differently? What can I do that I haven't done today? What can I do that I haven't seen other people do before? And so combining basically a chemogram with imagery that is photographic is something that I think I would really need to explore more, and that's what I'm getting more into, is combination of dream imagery and reality. So in this image, there's chemistry applied after the exposure has been made on the wet plate. And so it's very carefully controlled to keep it away from the image, yet to make it evenly distributed and not mess with the imagery. That was quite a feat. That took me a while to figure out. Also took me a while to figure out exactly which chemicals I like the effects of.
I remember when you told me you're gonna shoot a second plate and you're gonna send it to the gallery, and then I think it was like 6-7 hours later, and you said, "Yeah, I'm very close. I'm
Yeah,
nearly
yeah. No, I
finished it."
think I literally, this was plate number 9, attempt number 9. I think this one was number 10 or something. I think I did 10, but that was because at the end I was so frustrated that I was going at the same speed that I do those events, to where I actually dip the next plate into the silver before I even shoot this one. So I shot this one, I developed this one, and I fixed it, and I go, oh, okay, this is definitely going to be the keeper. Oh, but I still have another plate in the silver. Okay, I might as well try again. But yeah, there was nothing close to this. This was, it's amazing how you know what you want, but you have to get there via very unpredictable means. And so in my OCD behavior, I will push it until it's exactly what I wanted to see. There is no happy accident. It looks accidental, but it's always controlled and maintained and tried over and over again. I don't subscribe to happy accident. A happy accident can be viewed as I don't know, like a old leaf being torn off a tree and just floating around in the air in the rainstorm, and it gets pummeled by rain, and then it settles on some lawn, and then, okay, yeah, I'm happy. Well, that was a happy accident.
I totally
There's no
get you.
control. There's no control. If you're not, you don't know how to control the medium that you're working with, and you're just justifying whatever imagery comes up from doing random acts uh, without any control. To me, that's not. I don't like that, and I'll go down for that, but that's my view, and I'm sticking with it. You got to have a vision. Art is vision. Art is, otherwise it becomes wallpaper. It becomes beautiful, blotchy, colorful wallpaper. That's questionable whether everything that's on the wall is art. Artists have vision. Artists know how to execute it, and artists will strive for perfection. Whether it looks like this, it looks accidental, but no, this was plate number 9, and I don't think I could have done better.
It's very beautiful. I'm just curious right now. The first time you put color in a wet plate or in a, we go to for the daguerreotypes we come on later. Was this by accident or did you try as long until you got some color in? So to the viewers, this is not hand painted or something because they are like colored ambrotypes or tintypes. This is like,
No,
this is like done with chemicals, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
was it the first time you colored a wet plate like that? Was this an accident or did you try as
oh no,
long?
I mean, no, it wasn't really an accident. It was more of exploring the. Well, I mean, okay, let's step back. The very first time I saw blue in a tintype was an accident. I'm sure you've seen it too. If you don't wash out the fixer enough and you dip it in cyanide, there's your blue. If you overexpose, even if you're not using cyanide, if you overexpose and underdevelop severely, you get blue. So every once in a while, you get the blue from collodion getting too thick, or you're not washing out things well enough, or the exposure and development went wrong, and yeah, sometimes you get the blue. So that's an inherent property of tintype or wet plate medium. So I just kind of analyzed how it can be taken advantage of, I guess, and used with more control and purpose.
Very, very cool. The first time I saw it, I was really impressed. And
those particular blue spots, they did take me quite a while of figuring out exactly which chemistry does that.
Very, very cool.
That's not an inherent tintype quality.
Yeah, very cool. So jump to the next image.
Cool. So this is a fun plate that I did very recently, actually. A friend of mine, Jocelyn, she works in the medical field, and it's been pretty rough there. And she's very conflicted. I mean, she knows she has to do her job, but she has her own immunity issues, and she lives with somebody with immunity issues. So every time when she goes to work, it could be pretty hairy, and she's always thinking about how the virus is floating around all the time. You don't know what it is, but we're all just working to fight it. And so she came up with this composition. She said she wanted some kind of virus floating around her, and she'll be enacting the role of a medical worker as she is. And so that left me with how to do that. And so this was a quadruple exposure on an 8x10. Same Voigtlander Petzval, as a matter of fact, that image was the other image was taken with. And the stacking of the scale, so because those flowers are about the size of somebody's finger, they're not the size of somebody's head. So I needed to stack them in perspective and then change the focus as I'm exposing each one of them. And that's all, of course, on the natural timer of wet plate collodion, to where the plate has to stay wet, and working with an 8x10 camera. And it's in the dark, so no straight light gets in there. And it's all done with flash.
So that means you got like the plate holder out, refocus, plate holder in, take a picture, plate holder out, refocus, plate holder in, take a picture.
Nope. I pre-focused everything and marked on my rail where things are.
Okay, and then makes sense.
Flash her, move out the model, move out the head brace so it wouldn't get exposed, and then flash the little flowers on the bottom, refocus, flash the ones on the left, refocus, flash the ones on the right.
Very cool image.
And then there had to be a little bit of post-production, which I really like doing, because it's very analog post-production. You can bleach out certain elements and basically I had to make the stems disappear, like those two bottom ones and the one on the top right. The stem of those was bright as anything else and leading straight out of the frame, and that's not cool artistically. So I used a little bit of farmer's reducer. It's a potassium ferricyanide and hypo 1:1.
Okay. I would just have rubbed it off with a cotton ball or something, I guess.
Yeah, that would make it way too rough. That would scrape off the collodion. Yes, you could do that, but that would make for an ugly final. Like, actually, that was the funny thing, is that plate fell off of my paddle. So right on top there is a scraped off piece of collodion.
Oh, okay.
But it really does show with varnish. Every little terrible show. And it's all about what the original is, I think. For me, it is. I mean, there's people who do nothing but shoot wet plate, then put it in Photoshop, then clean it up, then brighten it down, then and then put a little vignette, and then and then make limited edition prints that they sell for thousands and thousands. But the originals is what saw the camera, is what saw my hands, is what saw the light coming off of the subject. It's I think direct positives are very poetic in that way, that the light that you see reflecting off of that plate is generated by the particles, the exact physical atomical particles that saw the light, that were affected by the light coming from the subject that you're looking at. And there is no other particles in the world that saw that light in that moment from that angle. And so the original, when you're holding it, is like holding that moment in time. And I don't think prints, no matter how big or colorful they are, have that allure.
This was very, very beautiful set, I have to say.
Thank you. I've been thinking about it for a little bit. And with the daguerreotype, it's even cooler. It just so happens that the daguerreotype particles are the exact same size as the wavelengths of light that they see. They're nanoscale particles. And they're exactly in the same range as visible wavelengths of light, like about 800 nanometers.
Oh, wow. We're just going to get one more wet plate, and then we're going to get to the daguerreotypes. So you sent me this, and I really liked it. With the newspaper and with the mask. You know, this is kind of a feeling, because you don't see the cars. It could be like in the 50s or something, or something like that, from my point of view.
Yeah, it's actually a neighborhood exactly down the street from my darkroom. I had to run with a plate holder. It's about a block and a half from my space. It is probably about a 1950s mostly neighborhood. My building is 1920s, but everything else is from that era, 50s, 60s. So again, my friend Justin, actually, same guy who we already saw naked. And this was wholly his idea. He's been collecting the newspapers with the headlines, creeping up the numbers of total deaths, and just documenting how the local news media is recording the pandemic. So here he is in his favorite gas mask and his Armani suit, waiting for the bus, waiting for news, waiting for someone to take him somewhere. Actually done with the 1870s wide angle lens, because when he told me to go shoot, when he told me that idea, I was really reluctant, because that is possibly the most boring bench I've ever seen in the most uninspiring little neighborhood that I can imagine. It's right across the street from my darkroom, and I've never found anything around. Behind it, there's an RV parked and a out of business place. It's been there for decades, and how am I going to make this bench interesting? Sure enough, it took me going out there a couple of times, waiting for the light. I had about a 15-minute window where the light was right and I wouldn't cast a shadow onto him. And then with a very wide angle lens and doing a lot of camera movements, was able to, I think, achieve kind of a dynamic image out of that very, very generic bus stop. But that's the fun of photography. I think that's one of the things I remember from junior college still, is one of our professors, like, if you're going to become a photographer, you're going to have to deal with problems. Problem solving is going to be your biggest fun part. And boy, have I had jobs where I had to problem solve every 5 seconds. Just where to shoot, how to light these people, how to shoot as fast as some of the jobs that hired me wanted to.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before. You had some portrait sessions where you shot, I don't know, 100 plates a day or more. I'm not sure. I just saw this like
no,
plates.
97 was my personal goal. But that's wet plate. I'm talking about shooting. Back in the day, I shot Little League soccer, and we would have to shoot with film, 12 rolls of film in 15 minutes, and have less than 5% non-printable shots. So one shot for each roll could be blurry. The rest had to be perfectly cropped, perfectly sharp, and you had to shoot all different players that touch the ball in 15 minutes, and then run to the next one, and then 15 minutes there. So basically, in the 1 hour Little League game, we would shoot 4 different fields, 8 teams. So in 1 hour, that would be 48 rolls of film with only 5% non-printable stuff. That really gets you prepared for the time when you have to shoot 100 wet plates in a day. And you have to be ambidextrous, and there's people asking you all sorts of questions about your camera, and there's 2 plates going at every time. I heard people can do more. I'd like to see it. They tried explaining it to me, and I get lost immediately in the explanation. There's people who say they can do 30, 40 an hour by themselves. I'm like, I don't know how that's humanly possible at all. I was moving at my top speed, and I was doing, it was 12 an hour.
12 an hour is a lot. I think when I shoot really alone without an assistant, I could do maybe 3 an hour, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean,
maybe 4. Not sure.
Question is, do you have people waiting for you? or they like coming up and it's kind of more leisurely kind of welcome here and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. No, this was high pressure stuff. These people were all prepaid. The guys who hired me paid for all the plates. All you do is line up. Here's your free tintype. You just wait as long as this guy tells you to. And some people waited up to an hour. So I have a line of usually about 10 to 15 people all going like this and waiting for their tintype. And then they finally get in there, and all I do is I turn around. I would always make sure on every one of them that they look their best. I would change my lighting. I would change my camera position. There would be one group of 3, 2, one with a dog, one, group of 5. So I have to change my lights and pose them all, make sure that nobody's hair is hanging on in their eye. And I mean, I would tell them, yeah, if you blink, that's on you, buddy. I'm not redoing it. But it's also on me to present those people in the way that their ancestors would like to see it, or their following generations, I mean.
Maybe we can show the viewers some of the portraits. I saw a lot of them already, and I was really surprised. As you said, how really very well you post them.
I can definitely send you some. I have them all copied. Yeah.
Really interesting how good it turned out in this stressful situation, because it's right for me. It would be really stressful to shoot so many in this short amount of time, and to really post them and make them like look as perfectly as you can in a Colombian wet plate.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of people, there's only so much you can do. You got to do all your best always. And for me, that was, I don't know. I felt high all the time. It's such a rush to have been doing it. You got to understand, like, I've never wanted to do anything but photography, and it was never in my intention to be rich, to be famous, to be known by, and all that. I wanted to do photography the best way that I could do photography. That was my goal. And so to be given a chance to push my limits and pay my rent at the same time and at that speed, oh God, I didn't even want to take lunch. I mean, those guys literally had to like stop people. They had to stop me and said, no, you're going to lunch right now, otherwise you're going to collapse. I wouldn't drink. Once you get it going, it's such a rush. It's such a rush. And once you start seeing them clear one after another, and if an oyster appears, you got to figure out where it's coming from, and it's so much fun. But everybody loved it. Everybody was really happy, and every time, like, I couldn't really talk to the people, but I have my assistant to wash the plates. That's all she did, is wash the plates, take people's information, and put them on the rack, the plates. I varnish them and mail them from home actually later. So that's another couple of days worth of work, but I can start spraying them and varnishing them and whatever at home. But still, even with every one of those plates, I sign them, and I always think, maybe this is the one that's going to survive the longest. Maybe this is the one that's going to be loved the most. Maybe this is the one that's going to bear my name last in this world 300-400 years from now. Do I want it sprayed with some shitty acrylic, varnished with a lot of dust, and matte, something less than perfect? So I try to make sure that I take them back to the darkroom and varnish them properly.
I can relate to that. I had once a shooting in a museum, and it was not as much as you had, like 12 or 13 plates, and I did it as you. I varnished it at home. I took my time, and it was like commissioned work. So to the guys who paid me, I just brought them then to the next day or the day after that, and brought them like that rack of tintypes and gave them that in their hands with little. I have like acid-free bags, and so they could send them there via the post office to the right people. Okay.
Yeah, no. I have little boxes. It's a big old shipping party here after one of those gigs. God, I hope I shoot one more of those this year. Literally one more this year, and like I'd be okay. Like last year was 2 of those gigs pretty much paid all my bills. Now my bills are really freaking low. You have no idea. People are like, huh? How do you do this? I'm like, I don't eat a lot. I buy nothing, and I don't spend any money on anything other than photography. And I have a miracle rent situation. Period. That's it. And so I've adjusted my living to fit my desire to be an artist, to the easiest possible, to where I can survive on minimum, and I can make work come from here.
So when will be then your next session? You have no plans right now?
Zero.
Zero.
No idea. Everything is canceled. Whenever they're going to allow gatherings of 100,000 people in a convention center. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, sure. So where can people find the next appointment if there's something? So I can put it down in the description. If there's...
Oh no, that's not. Those gigs are going to be totally random, and please don't look for them.
Okay.
Yeah,
no, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just it's a thing. Anybody can find me on the Photo Palace blog. Contact me through there. Anytime you're in San Diego, stop by my studio, commission a portrait, take a look at a lot of beautiful plates I have from Yosemite and from all my travels. They're very nice plates. Have a daguerreotype made. I can do house calls. I've done daguerreotype sessions while traveling in the bus. So if you want to sign up, let's say I get somebody in Nevada, and then I get somebody in Colorado, then I get somebody in Wyoming. Well, I can do a nice little zigzag in the bus and come by and take a daguerreotype at your place. So I don't know when the next big gigs are going to happen, and frankly, I've been all right without them for 10 years. So if they don't happen, but they will. Those guys were really nice, and we really had fun working together for sure.
Very cool. So I will put all the links you just told me in the description to your blog and to everything else. It sounds really tough, like to live on this limit you just told us before. To
we'll be more hopeful, yes. Sometimes it's not all rosy, man. So
you're right.
Reality hits, man.
Yeah, I think it's very cool what you do, and always follow your work. And I'm always surprised what is possible because I didn't ever imagine that this is possible.
That's my whole point, is like, why not really take this shit out of the boundaries? Like, there's so, especially with wet plate too. I think in Europe it's less so, but here is such a strong tie to the Civil War era that they love reminiscing about, because I really think the South is not over losing and never will be. But yeah, like the main people who taught wet plate in America were always super traditionalists. And I think it was in part thanks to possibly Quinn Jacobson, or I would like to say that it's probably more thanks to the European culture and just better understanding of what art is, that Europe didn't fall into that whole, like, oh, you must dress up in vintage garb, and you must have the vintage camera, and the photographer must have a top hat and act as if he's selling you snake oil. I don't know. I'm not into personality. I like my image. I like equipment matters. How you talk to the people matters, of course, but it's the final image that really matters. That's going to stand there and through time.
Because you said equipment, how do you feel when you can use such kind of cool equipment?
I feel very honored. I feel very blessed, I must say, because as a refugee whose grandfather was a photographer, he probably only dream of working with these kind of cameras. I'm sure, though, in his days he would dream of Leicas and Rolleies, but be confined to a Zenit. But for me to actually be able to use proper, beautiful equipment is very humbling. I'm very honored every time I do that. There's a camera that I recently helped rescue from a Colorado basement or attic or wherever. But it was a 8x10 1873 Scoville camera that I took to Yosemite. It came with an original back. All I had to replace was the bellows. And with an original lens, I was able to shoot subjects that would have been shot with it back then, that it was intended for, with the medium that it was intended for. And that was definitely an incredible feeling to kind of bring the loop back and give it another life that it really was meant to have. All that equipment that sits on people's shelves, it's not used. It's kind of sad. Even though I don't use every lens that I have every time, but I'm only keeping lenses and cameras that could do something different when the inspiration strikes and my vision calls for it.
Because it's something I always think if I shoot a portrait with I have one Dallmeyer lens, the 2B, and I think I would love to see what people were sitting already in front of this camera.
Yeah,
or
no,
this lens.
all the things that those cameras saw. Those cameras were making a living for people. They were tools. They weren't, weekend warriors. Those guys were working photographers, and they treated their cameras pretty rough. So it's actually pretty rare to find a wet plate camera, because they were all wood, and silver nitrate corrodes wood like no tomorrow. So to find a working wet plate back matching to the camera that they survived for 150 years together, and both in working condition, was incredible. So I got really lucky to find that 8x10. I'm definitely, that's going to become my probably go-to landscape camera. Yeah, I can't let that one go. Every time I think of how many cameras I have, I shake my head, but there's no other way. There's no other way. The Portrait 8x10 Rembrandt, it's perfect because it's got a 9-inch lens board. You can put Dallmeyer 5A on there if you want. The Zone 6, there's no way to get around having all of those beautiful movements for when you need it. It's got tilt, swing, shift, rise, everything you want. So you're doing a beautiful still life or a very intricate technical landscape portrait or landscape shot, you do need that. And then how can I let go of an 1876 Scoville made by American Optical Company?
So let's go on to the daguerreotypes.
So this is the self-portrait done with my latest daguerreotype experiments. This was done actually last year when I started experimenting with the way to capture the prismatic effect that is present technically that is possible in the daguerreotype media, but it's not exactly common to where it was used. So it was actually around Thanksgiving 2018, after having a really interesting experience, throw me for a good loop of depression, because a big artist very much disrespected my art. Basically, nice slap in the face. And so after a while, I climbed out of it and I said, nope, I'm going to make the best daguerreotypes ever. And how can I do that? What can I do that has never been done before? What can I do? Where can I take this medium that nobody's dreamed of taking it in 180 years? And it took about 3 months of daily daily experimentation to develop this style where I'm playing on the iridescence and the opalescence of the daguerreotype surface because, as I mentioned a little earlier, it just so happens that the particle size daguerreotype is right within the range of visible spectrum light wavelength, particle wavelength. Depending on how densely you grow these mercury and silver crystals, how big you grow them, you get all the different refraction. So what you're seeing right now actually is just one stage of this image. If you were to hold it in your hand and tilt it at different angles, the light would really change the color, the values, and the contrast. The blue would shift to green, the pinks would shift to white, the purples might shift to blue, the yellow on the bottom, and the yellow on the sides might shift to pink. So it plays it plays all through the spectrum technically, because you can have particles of all different sizes. So it took me a while to figure out how to work on the layering and work on the color. And this is all done analog. There's not a single digital part. Everything is done in camera. It's part of what I'm calling my visual symphony, because I see every plate as a note in a big melody of my vision. And so that's called the breathe in, and I'm breathing in my dreams, my vision, my prana, as they say in India, the life essence. And that's why I chose to do a self-portrait in that dream. It all focuses on the intersection of dream and reality, and the fourth part of the symphony is just right now getting very much solidified in my head. I'm trying to figure out right now how to finish that damn symphony. That might take a while. All last year I worked on the first three parts. The fourth part is like, I have the tempo and the scale. I know exactly what tempo I want in the scale, and even the melody. I know I can see the melody happening, but I don't know which instruments I need to choose. Where's going to be the flute, where there's going to be the drums, which part is coming from. And I think there's going to be some instruments that have not yet been invented. So I need to build certain things. I'm talking a bit cryptic, but it's all going to be analog 100%.
Yeah, I think as you're talking about more other forms and colors, I guess, and something like that.
The color, it's called pearlescence, I think, or opalescence and pearlescence. It's the same effect that you see in the pearl on the refraction of I think it's the same when the oil spill on water, and you see this beautiful sheen of oil. It's all different rainbows. There, it's the two different liquids interacting. Here, we have the particles. So the daguerreotype is made of tiny particles of silver that's amalgamated with mercury. And it's mainly silver. There's very trace amounts of mercury. And in the end, even most of that mercury is replaced with gold during gilding. So the final product is actually silver and gold. And of course, they're colorless, but the shape of the particles make the light refract in different ways, depending on the angle that you view it and the angle of lighting. It's like a living, infinitely varied, holographic kind of an image, because they really do look holographic, because they're sitting. So the blacks that you're seeing in front of yourself are actually reflective metallic surfaces. So if you were to reflect light in it, you'd actually see this exact image in the negative. Only daguerreotype kind of does that. Tintypes, you can catch them sometimes that way too. The blue was known how to get with severe overexposure. Blue is pretty much easy to get. And then the purples is what people really kind of strived for. If it had that kind of a pearly white to purple transition, if you're looking at it straight, it's white. If you kind of tilt the plate pretty heavily, which is why you actually see this one's tilted pretty minimally, but you see the tilt on the mat. That's actually mostly to avoid reflection of my iPhone, with which I took this particular copy. With the tilt, the pink increases. The more you tilt, the deeper it gets, the deeper purple it gets. And if you tilt it the other way, that purple can go to white. So in somebody's face, actually, back in the day, you can have that little rosy glow at certain angles. That was basically considered like, oh, you got lucky, and it's really nice image then, really nice play. So it took me a while to figure out exactly how to consistently get to those values and have them interact with other colors of the spectrum.
It's unbelievable. If even if you explain it, I'm far away to understand how you did that. But it's so
Man,
beautiful.
there's articles out there. The funny thing is, Mike Robinson, big daguerreotype guy worldwide, kind of dominating the medium right now. I think he was writing literally as I was experimenting with this. Apparently, he was working with MIT and somebody else writing this article on the plasmonic effects of nanoparticles. And so these guys are working on how to make, I don't know, like in the sci-fi stuff, you see like a car driving by and going from green to blue to like on a push of a button. So they're trying to create those kind of paints that would just switch color or something. And they're looking at daguerreotypes because it's got a nanoparticle structure that is conducive to showing up as different colors at different angles. And there's so much science to this. I go exactly as deep into that science as I need to create my imagery. So I have a basic understanding of why these things happen, and enough of that understanding to where I can manipulate my imagery to have them come out like I see them, because that's photography to me. There's chemistry, there's physics, there's math. I love them all, but photography is about making images. You got to be able to produce something stunning with all that knowledge.
And you definitely did.
I try, man. I really like that picture.
No, it's really beautiful. So
That
let's
was
jump to the next one.
Yeah. Oh, party bug. This was my happy 2020, everyone. Yay, let's all party. It's going to be a great year. Little did we know there was already COVID-19 somewhere in China, just a little bit slowly spreading out and getting us all. But yeah, it's a bug I found in the local liquor store. June bug. One of those big green things that scare most people when they come right next to you, but they're really beautiful. Yeah, that's just a Happy New Year's plate. Also part of my Visual Symphony Part 3. Just the way I see things. I saw this bug on its back by the counter of the liquor store, and just the way that it had its like hands like this, it really made me think that it's dancing and it's like shooting out sparklers, or it looked like a happy bug. So I decided to put him on a flying carpet, kind of a leaf flying carpet, and send him soaring through the sky once again.
Yeah, it's a beautiful plate, but as funny as it sounds, it's also the bug that all hit us in 2020 and set us at home, or left us at home for some time right now.
But, it'll be a reminder of how overly optimistic we all may have been at one point or another in our life. It's all right. We'll be back. We'll party.
Yeah, we will. It's gonna take some time, but it's gonna be okay. Someday.
Yeah,
Absolutely right. Okay, I'll go to the next one.
This is a very recent one. So after I finished the third part of the visual symphony and posted them all, I've been in a rut this whole year. I've only shot maybe 3 or 4 daguerreotypes altogether. A couple of them were commissions, and I'm like, you know what? I gotta start. I gotta start doing. So a lot of times when I have almost no inspiration, and I really get that nagging feeling that I'm not living up to my potential, I go and just fume a plate. I fume a plate without any. I polish it, I fume it, and I have no idea what I'm going to shoot onto it. And then having done that work and having that plate ready and asking for an image pushes me to go out and take a little break, a meditation break, and decide what's going to go onto it. So that's how this one came about. It's the same thistle that stands in my darkroom, and I love using for props because I love the geometry of it and the sharpness and yet the softness of those curves. But I saw an image by a German photographer who did a daguerreotype of 2 of these thistles, and I'm like, wow, you guys have the exact same kind. And so I thought to myself, well, these grow in California, they never see frost, and they grow amid cities. And so I kind of blended it. I imagined my thistle having been born in Germany and known like frostbite.
Mm-hmm.
And so the little white texture, that's actually usually considered a defect in daguerreotype technique. Is called frosting. Those are little mercury amalgams where there's 0 image period. But you can use that deliberately if you know how to produce them in the areas where you want them to the degree that you want them. So I'm calling this one thistle amid frost. So it's kind of a city dwelling thistle with lights going through it and all that. But then with this frostbite hits and there's particles in the air, very cold for some reason, even though I'm in San Diego. But yeah, this image was first daguerreotype in months that I did, and now I'm really motivated because I'm getting closer and closer to figuring out exactly those particular instruments that I need to figure out for the imagery for finishing up. But it's basically that's where I've been going from the start, from my experimentation from 2018 through the first part of the visual symphony. If you go to the blog, you can see them in progression. There's part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 was just abstract. There was colors, shapes, and that's it, and tones. And that was me exercising the control of placing color and having them interact and having just shapes make up the image itself. Then I moved on to adding color in a whole different, completely different manner than it is done, for example, in this shot in a part 2 where I have my space explorer objects taking off to unknown planets and having atmospheric conditions, kind of exploring where it's livable because here it's become unbearable. So all these common objects that are no longer used decided to take off to another planet and explore different worlds. So there I'm adding color in a completely different way, but I'm already using visual photographic elements. Because to me, something produced purely by light or purely by chemistry, even though it's produced upon a photographic plate or film or paper, basically photographic material, I'm not going to make a step and call anything made that way a photograph. A photographic medium has a direct relation to reality. It was created for the sole purpose of perfectly documenting the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Niepce wanted abstract stuff, he would definitely draw. Like, there has been Bosch and anybody before them. You can draw anything that you wish that does not exist. But if you want to portray something in reality, there's nothing better than photography. There's nothing better than a daguerreotype, actually, or a tintype, second best for sure, to make that with a nice lens, with some technical knowledge. You can make a representation of the world around us like no other medium. So to have an image and call it a photograph and not have some inkling of reality, to me is defeating the purpose. It's basically, yes, not at all. That's not photography. It's photographic based imagery, photomaterialist based images, whatever you want to call them. But the whole goal for me was to blend photography and imagination in a way that hasn't been done before, in the way that I foresee it in my own dreams, in my own everyday, actually, daydreams and realities. Whenever I look at things, all I see is lights and shapes and colors. And so I want to show in a plate how I see the world. But there's got to be some world. So that's what I'm doing now, is mostly blending natural elements, whatever they may be, with my own interpretation of them through the prism of daguerreotyping.
You maybe want to explain very shortly how a daguerreotype is done?
Yes. A daguerreotype is the first photographic process invented or commercially available and successful. It was practiced from 1830s till about mid-50s to late 50s, when tintypes and amber types took over. But it's done very, very beautifully. That's another reason why with my small chemistry background, I'm completely in love with that process. It is made on a pure plate of silver or copper that has been coated with silver, but the surface is pure silver. Then you give it fumes of elemental iodine, elemental bromine. That makes bromides and iodides of silver, which are light sensitive, which are exactly the same chemistry that has been in use in black and white photography ever since daguerreotype. And then you stick it in the camera, expose that one plate, and then develop it over fumes of mercury. Then you fix it in regular hypo and gild it with gold chloride. So the most amazing thing to me when I realized was the very first steps to actually get you to produce the image are all done with elements taken straight from the periodic table of elements. They're elemental silver, elemental iodine, bromine, and mercury. There's no compound chemistry there. It's literally you're playing with elements of nature in their raw form, and you produce an incredible image that later you have to fix with sodium thiosulfate and gold chloride. Those are the only two compounds in the whole equation of daguerreotype. And so, and light is the most raw essence of it. But yeah, you're playing with elemental chemistry and light, and the resolution is incredible. You can electro scanning microscope scan those, and it gets nutty. The detail there, I can't even describe it. If it's done with that purpose, if you're shooting something so detailed, that you do it in such a way that preserves that. Otherwise, you can have much more rougher image like what you're seeing in front. Actually, this is pretty coarse. Although on the original, I bet you can see a lot more. I'm trying to convey them on a JPEG, on a screen, on a phone, anywhere. It's definitely like smelling a rose in a gas mask. It's not an experience you want to have. It's just a ghost, people. That's just a ghost. If you really want one, this one is for sale too. All my work is for sale. It needs to go somewhere. I don't know. And I love the fact that I'm doing it. I'll hang on to this plate until I die, but I'd be much happier if it was very admired somewhere else and on some other continent, hopefully.
It sounds good. So people, you know where to go. The links are in the description. Just contact Anton.
Just be aware, daguerreotypes are not like a tintype. They cost me 10 times more to make.
How long does it take for a daguerreotype?
Well, Yeah, it took 30 years to learn photography. It took 6 years to actually learn daguerreotyping. So that all time counts. From start to finish, I can probably do one, and if all goes really well, in an hour, hour and a half. If all goes really, really, really well, yeah,
Is there the polishing
hour.
included? Polishing the
Yeah,
plate?
hmm
Okay.
yeah. Polishing, exposing, development is only 5 minutes. Takes a couple of minutes. Gild, and then you got to seal them. So I usually, when people come over to the studio for one, I usually tell them to allot 2 to 3 hours just in case. And I try to make 2 plates most often. But no, they take a while. This one took 4 days actually, because this was not the first. I got the vision, but I tried for 4 days to get the frost the right size, to get the elements, the visual elements, to interact in correct way without overpowering, without being too little, and also to just have a geometric kind of flow. So this, yeah, that little plate took 4 days. It took 4 days, I swear.
I think it explains it perfectly. 23 years for photography, 7 years daguerreotype, and 4 days for the plate. So this is gonna
Yep.
be a lot of time you spent there to get the results like that. Very,
Yeah,
very.
and people come over and they see you whip out a plate in 10 minutes and you get it from the first try, and they're like, whoa, why should I, I don't know how much you sell your tintypes for, say $200. Like, oh, really? This piece of metal is $200? I went to school for 10 years to learn how to do this. I spent all my life learning how to do this in one take. So you actually look good, not 20 iPhone shots and then 20 filters. No, I can do this with chemistry in front of you, and you look the best that you'll ever look in your life, which is always my favorite comment, by the way. If somebody genuinely, you can always tell when they're being genuine. They're like, this is the best freaking picture I've ever seen of myself. I'm like, yes, my job here is done.
Yeah,
that's it.
absolutely.
Likely, this is the best one ever. So carry it with you and care for it. That really makes me happy always.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I know when somebody tells that if I took a portrait, even if it's a digital one or one on a wet plate, I prefer to shoot wet plate, but they're gonna make a living of other stuff too. It's the moment, you know that, but when the image appears in the fixer slowly, or depends on the fixer you use, maybe faster.
Yeah.
It's like always. I do that now, not that long as you do. I think 5 years, 6 years, but it's every time magic for me if I stand there and see it appearing. I know when I see the negative, or when I see it during development, I know already how it's gonna look like. I have it in my mind already, but
totally.
Still.
But then you see it clearing. It's the same thrill that I got the first time that I remember pulling out the negatives from the developing reel when I was a kid. It's the same feeling that I got the first time I saw a cyanotype clear when you were pouring the water on it. And now with the daguerreotypes, I get that giddiness. It's amazing. I get that giddiness literally like as soon as I start polishing the plate. For some reason, to be working with that very first, very elusive technique, and to have a pure silver plate in your hands and know that you're going to succeed on putting something on this thing right now. And yeah, it's just the anticipation builds up. In daguerreotype, there's 2 times when you get the chance to have that kind of a wow moment. The first time is when your development is by inspection, kind of also. So you put it in a mercury vat, which has to be very safe and has to be extremely well made. Don't mess around with this, people. This is mercury will get you. So you close the dark side, and the first time you can take it out in about 2 to 3 minutes. If all the densities are right, you're examining it under very, very dim red light. Probably the same dimness would work as with wet plate, but even dimmer is safer. So you're examining the reflection of the negative of it, and if the densities are all there, I sometimes yelp out of excitement because it's just, they look so good. They look so good there, and it's going to gild perfectly. And then you fix it and you gild it, you cannot let it dry between development and the final drying. You have to fix it, then keep it in the water, then mix up your gold solution, then pour that gold onto a still wet plate, then heat it up. Then you see the reaction happening. It gets a little brighter and everything is okay. And then you have to dry it off really quickly. So I have a hair dryer that I force dry it with. When it dries, that's when it goes, that little thin sheet of water, when it just disappears and it just reveals that first glimpse of the dry image. That's when like the angel starts singing, if it's a correct one, because all of the blues just go whoosh at you. Even the ones that you saw there, you saw a great image. You saw the whites, you saw the blacks, you saw the blues and all the colors. But when it dries, the blacks drop 3 zones, the whites rise a zone, the colors get intensified, and it's just light opens up in the sky, and it's really cool. Daguerreotype is nothing like it. And yesterday I made a image combining these kind of elements with this very, very ugly building that I hate so much. And I really love the image as it's coming up. And I got so excited because, again, I've been working on this one for 2 days now. And it was a perfect, exactly what I wanted. And I'm gilding it. And then I forgot to add a buffer to the gilding solution to make it less acidic a little bit. Technically, in the olden days, half of the formulas listed it and half the formulas didn't. And it's, sodium something. It's just a few drops that you have to put to knock down the pH of the solution. Like, oh no, I forgot to put it. But you have to keep going. Once you apply the heat, like without gilding, there's really nothing you can do. Everything is already on there. I'm heating it, and as it's getting 30 degrees, which is where I take everybody does it differently. I go to about 130, 135 Fahrenheit. As it's getting there, all of the solution all of a sudden got really milky. And I got so disappointed. I thought this was the second time ever that this happens. And basically I thought that I ruined the image, because the gilding solution is so precariously balanced chemically. Any minute contamination or even a little bit too much heat, you literally lose the image completely. Just, it goes from being there to not at all. Just not even like, oh, this is kind of a bad image. No, there's not. No, it's gone, period. It's just, can't even see it. So I was just thinking like, oh no, it's going to happen, but I got to keep going. Turns out it's just a solution that went milky, and when I washed it off, I needed to jump to the roof because it all of a sudden all came back. Just like from basically almost seeing milk on the plate to like, oh, there's my image, and it's perfectly gilded. Yay! So yeah, daguerreotype is a pain, but it's a very, very joyful pain once you get it.
Just wanted to say a beautiful pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's jump to the next one. Okay.
Yeah. So this is one of the simpler geometric ones that I was that I did for the first part of the Daguerrean Symphony. It's the interaction between cold and warm energies, and this was just arriving at the time when I was able to say, okay, I want a larger, very warm body by color, and I want a smaller, very cool body, and I want all the interactions in between them kind of in a rainbow-esque. Green is incredibly hard to get, vivid green. Blues and yellows are easier, and reds and pinks and all that. Green is a tough one. This was one of the last plates I did for that series, to where I could definitely say to myself, I know how to make this part bluer, this part warmer, and I can put a couple of layers underneath, layers above, and all the interaction.
Just a question, are these shapes, are these like paper sheets somewhere, stickers somewhere? How do you get these shapes on?
There is definitely a lot of shapes there. I cannot go into more.
Okay.
There's definitely shapes, I can tell you that. And there's definitely paper.
Okay. No, it's fine.
But it's all totally analog. That's all I can say. There's
Very cool. Very cool
it's
image.
all about their interaction. On the next one, I can tell you all about technique.
It was because it's so, I don't know, a lot of people don't would even think of it as a photograph. Maybe they think of it like a painting, or if you see that, what you're gonna see, maybe it's a painting, I guess.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
draw that somewhere. Nobody would ever think it's a photograph or
that's
a daguerreotype.
yes. Even if they thought it was a photograph, even those people who know what a daguerreotype is, which there aren't a lot of, or what a daguerreotype actually usually looks like, is so many people. Again, like I'm working right now with a guy to help him out I think he's in Philippines. He's getting there, but he doesn't have a single daguerreotype in his possession, just something to compare to. Up until very recently, he's never even seen a daguerreotype live, because they were popular in Europe and America, but everywhere else in the world, you can barely find them. And even here, most photographers have never held a daguerreotype. They consider themselves a photographer because they have a Nikon D800, but they've never actually looked at history of photography, the craft, or even if they did, they never went out and held the thing in their hand or looked at 20 of them to see that, they were never this colorful. They were never this abstract. They were never this translucent.
In Austria, we are pretty lucky because we have the Westlicht Museum, and they have like they're a daguerreotype camera, like a pretty big one, and they have a big collection of daguerreotypes. They have like their normal exhibitions of all kind of photographs, but the daguerreotypes are all the time there. So we can go and walk in.
The permanent collection.
Yeah, it's beautiful to look at them. I never held one in my hand, but just to move your head around and see it from different angle of view, to see what's happening with the reflection, and how these old ones, how fine grain they are. There is no grain. I know it's so.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about those particles grain technically. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I have an image where it's a still life. It's a quarter plate. There's a still life with a whole bunch of materials, but among them is a metal file, one of those metal files that you grind metal with.
Yeah, I know. I think I've seen the image. I'm gonna put it in there if you send it to me too.
Yeah, we can put it in there, but I tried for a while to copy it, because on that metal file, there's these little diamond-shaped teeth, right? Mm-hmm. Those diamond-shaped teeth are made with some machine that gouged out the grooves in two directions as the metal went by. It's less than a quarter of an inch. It's probably about 3/16 of an inch on the plate that the whole file is, and there's however many grooves within that. I have a crazy magnifying glass, and it magnifies like 50 to 100 times. In between each one of those grooves, between those diamonds in the grooves, it looks like Grand Canyon. There is infinite detail there of how the gouge went by, and every piece of metal that is there has full tone, full shape, and full definition. It's microscopic detail that it's capturing in nanoscale. And that was taken with a modern lens at f/22, big old tripod, just super steady. It's insane what it can do. Insane.
You're just torturing us because we cannot see it.
I'm torturing myself because I'm trying to imagine myself looking. I literally would get lost looking at that file for a while, just following each one of those grooves. That's the beauty. That's why people, you should buy a daguerreotype every once in a while. If it's quality and it calls you, buy it, because you can look at a poster of Van Gogh's Starry Night, but if you had that painting, you can see every brush stroke, wherever he laid those thick layers of paints to make those scales go through the sky of the swirling. Or if you had the Mona Lisa, which you would be able to see the cracks developing over time in the paint on the wooden panel. There's an interaction that happens between actual physical objects. that you'll never get from just listening to me or looking at my blog. Sorry. Just get one and you'll love it. And I love it. I love you for it.
So I want to show the next daguerreotype. And the first thing you're going to tell us, how long did it take for you to make this beautiful panorama?
This was a good story. I will mention no names.
No, it's fine.
But somebody told me once that, and it's true, I read it in the 1890s history of photography book, which by 1890s they already had quite a few processes and quite a few decades of history to talk about. And they, of course, talk about, okay, here's the daguerreotype, and there's a Talbot type, and there's all this other stuff. And now we have roll film. Kodak has their box camera. All you do is this. And then, okay, the new next challenges are stopping motion, pretty good. And of course, we still haven't cracked color. But they said the ultimate challenge for any photographer remains a multi-plate panoramic daguerreotype with even tonality and cleanly done and well done. Because to make one perfect daguerreotype of an outdoor scene without the blue sky, with the sky even, without the sponges and all that stuff, it's not easy. But to make 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in a row of the same scene to where all the tones are perfect, that is not easy at all. It's very hard. So for a while I was working with this piece of equipment that I was testing out, and I had a lot of problems, and I was just basically talking to the maker, and he said something about, because I kept making all these test plates in the studio every day. And every day they were pretty much perfect, because after doing it every day on the same still life, just doing a test plate, yeah, I can put out, perfect plate almost every time. And they said to me something like, yeah, well, because I kept telling them, hey, my results are consistent. I know what I'm doing. It's not my fuming. It's not my buffing. Something else is going on. And then it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course you can make a consistent image in a test plate in the studio, but you could try a multi-plate panorama. And I said, you know what? I'm going to not only do a panorama, I'm going to do it better than anybody has ever done, or at least differently than anybody has ever done a panoramic image. And I'm going to do it on a daguerreotype form, and I'm going to do it quality-wise better than that particular artist, I think, has ever made a daguerreotype panorama. So this is the first Antorama. It is composed of 7 daguerreotype plates taken with 4 different lenses to correct for perspective. So I'm standing at the end of a very, very long pool, and if we were just to look at the very center image, that building probably about 300, 400 feet away from me, versus the buildings at the very right and the very left plates are maybe 40 feet from me. So if I was to take a lens, like the middle lens is a 210 millimeter slide zoom. If I was to pivot the camera to my left or to my right, I would just barely get the arch of those buildings. Not the flowers, not the top of the building, not the palm tree on the right and the left images. Those are taken with 120. But if I was to take that 120 that I took a shot of the left and the right, and then pivoted to the center, well, that building would be really, really far away and small in the frame. So by changing my lenses gradually, stepping them up first and then stepping them down by 30 millimeter increments, I was able to change the scale of things of interest, basically. Make the building in the center bigger and make the buildings on the sides smaller so they fit all in frame. So I call that Antorama. And
Amazing.
that took me it took me a month, but only because of the weather. Because our freaking San Diego, which usually is super sunny, decided to be not sunny. It took me going back to that spot 4 times. I want to say 4, but maybe 5. 5 was definitely going to be maximum. Oh yeah, it would have definitely been 4, but I erased the wrong image and had to, and that's the one that gave me trouble the most. Uh, but yeah, I had to be there at exactly 1 p.m. because it's at that time that the sun aligns absolutely perfectly and skims the walls. You can see the shadows on the very far left plate, how
Yeah.
it's just starting to lick that wall, and everything was lit just perfectly. The sun was directly behind me. Yeah, you can see it on the very left plate. You can see the 2 shadows from palm trees, and then if you look on the second plate from the left, you can see it hitting the corner right there. Yep. Right between the palm tree and the light. And on the door too, it's on the frame of the door is starting to fall. And then if you look at the third plate, you can see the far right on the corner, there's a little protrusion from the building, and that's brightly lit while the main wall of that boring building is not lit. So that only happened for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes every day, that light. So I would come back with a plate, I would set up and wait for that light to come back. And it's exposed again with 4 different lenses, which this was the project that I actually finally was convinced that indeed different lenses, different coatings, different amounts of elements, and different thicknesses of glass, they do very much eat up UV differently. And daguerreotypes and tintypes are UV sensitive. So I had a 120, 150, 180, and a 210 millimeter lens that I had to match perfectly the exposure with. And if you expose my 180 at f16 for 20 seconds, and then you expose the 120 for exact same exposure that you set on the plate, on the lens, your plate comes out 2 stops different in light, or it's about a stop and a half, because one has much thicker coatings and glass. And so I did a number of plates to where I would mask off portions of a plate, and I would expose 4 different lenses of the same scene onto the same plate to try to match and try to know that if I'm exposing this plate, this lens for 15 seconds, then to match it, this one needs 25, and this one needs 18, and this one and then, yeah, so 4 lenses on a daguerreotype, that was quite a feat. And I'm very happy to say that this one is residing with a very good private collector by now. It's in a big frame, all framed up.
How big is one plate?
Each plate is 4 by 5 inch.
No, but it's gonna be a big image. It's gonna be beautiful. This is insane
Yeah.
what you're
It's
just
4
explaining.
times 7. What do we got? 23. It's about a 34-inch frame.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that one. Oh man, I was happy. I was so happy when I got it. It's interesting to me that this has never been done before too. You can imagine it. Okay, if somebody is in a video in movie format, this has been done. Say somebody's standing in front of on the other side of the street and videoing 2 people getting closer and closer to them and passing them on the street. Well, when they're far away, they got it zoomed in on their faces. And as they're closing, you get wider, and then they're walking away and you go zoom, you follow them. And it's never been like in the still format presented. Yes, in panoramas, technically, yeah, your eye wants the lines to connect perfectly. But if I connected all those lines perfectly, then that building would be tiny in the background there, super tiny and not interesting. And so
Yeah.
I think it works. It's a little more of a haptic take on panorama. And I have another one in mind, which will also be really, really cool when I do it. But that's going to be even more difficult, believe it or not. It's actually, it will be more difficult and even less useful because of the way I'm envisioning it. You'll see what I'm talking about later. But this way I can totally see working. Like if somebody has 3 or 4 lenses and they're in front of a big cliff or something that goes into the distance and they want to keep following the cliff in the distance. And I think this could be, or in a big cathedral, if you've got big old walls right close up to you and you want that far, far, far element in the very end of the hall. You keep zooming in and zooming out as you go side to side. I'm not expecting anyone else to even try this ever, and especially not in daguerreotype, but good luck if you do.
I cannot imagine anybody else doing that. I did not even know how much work you put in this, that how many tries you did until you got.
Well, that was
unbelievable. It's really insane if you look in the image.
The final satisfaction that I personally got out of this project is that I've asked the other person to show what they've done with the panoramics daguerreotypes, and they showed me a 5-plate panorama done all with the same lens. 5 plates. They were matching okay, but not as good as this. And there were only 5, and he said that it took him 7 tries. And for these 7 with 4 different lenses, it took me 5 tries, and they match better. So I'm just happy that I'm able to do this. I'm not trying to stoke my own ego. I'm just I am thrilled that after all this time, photography is something I can do.
No, it's really beautiful, and I think even the spaces in between the plates. I know now it's digital, but they also do a very good, I call it kind of trick to make the panorama more seamless, if this makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I noticed that when I was playing around with this on digitally. So the final one, I don't know if I have the copy of it. I don't think I do, because they're really, really, really hard to copy, period, because they're so reflective. And copying them all together is nearly impossible. But you have to imagine that it's a black mat, and it's spaced about the same. But then I actually put another mat over it and cut even larger windows. So there's, between each picture, there's a mat and then another strip of mat. So it's double matted. Every one of them is double matted, and that little distance, I kept it basically 3/8 of an inch. And so it's very geometrical, symmetrical, kind of like 4-line repetition, there's a new image. 4-line repetition, there's a new image. So it really tied it all together.
Really beautiful. So this was the last one right now. I just stopped the sharing again. So people, if they made it until here, because I think it's the longest one we ever had, and it's very, very specific. So you're gonna be very interested into this kind of photography. You know, these types of video podcasts are not for everyone, but people who are interested in daguerreotypes are gonna love this, you know.
Tag that stuff. Tag it, because there's not a lot of people doing dags, man. It's starting to. That guy, the guy who I kept saying is dominating the spectrum now. He's spreading it around the world, I'm sure, because he's making major bank on that, major. But he's spreading it to people who are basically weekend warriors because it costs so much, and as many of them that start will not go on. I want to say there's 3-4 people who can consistently do quality daguerreotypes in the world. Valerius Gang is being the closest to you, and I almost think he's the only one in Europe. Literally, there's one guy in Spain who does Becquerel, which is without mercury. I don't even consider it daguerreotype. It's literally it's a pale shadow of what a daguerreotype could be. because there's no mercury involved and there's no bromine involved. It loses all capacity for color, for that opalescence for some reason. Like I've never ever have I seen any opalescence in Becquerel dags, and it's just such it looks ugly compared to a real thing. But yeah, there's 3 to 4 people in the world who can do them really well, who do them every once in a while. There's really nobody doing them like consistently anymore, like for no reason at all other than like, oh, I have a gallery lined up, oh, I have a need to make plates for this organization. It's all good and stuff, but no, daguerreotypes, amazing, man, amazing. You really come over to California, man. I'll show you some good ones.
Yeah,
it's good here.
It's quite far away, and I don't think you're gonna travel the next time. But I was like 2014, 2015, I was there. But I didn't shoot any wet plates, so I did not even know. 15, 14, maybe it was 13, I don't know. Whatever. The last question I have for you is, you know it already. What question would you like to ask yourself?
I thought about that question for a while. That's an interesting. I'm having a hard time understanding the premise of the question. Is it what question would I like for everyone to ask me, or what question do I need an answer for from myself or from the universe?
You can choose.
If somebody wants to ask me questions, I'm always happy to provide any answer that I know within scientific reasoning. I don't speculate on anything else. Otherwise, I would, for myself, and I touched upon this before briefly, but for myself, one thing I would really like to know is which of my plates will survive the longest, and how many, when will it be last held by whom and admired for what reason. Because all these plates that I make, they're moments of my life and they're moments of my labor and my vision, and they will outlast us all and all of our grandchildren, provided they're not destroyed by fire or something like that. It's they're metallic particles, and with the ways that we know how to seal daguerreotypes now, with the things that we know about archival qualities, I have no problem telling people that I guarantee them in 200 years this image is going to be exactly like that. And if in 3 to 4 to 500 years something goes wrong and it gets tarnished, well, even today you should see the amazing new technologies they have for reversing the tarnishing and for bringing back completely obscured, blacked out images. Now in 400 years they'll be able to do that to mine. So I wonder if any of them will be seen by aliens. That's what I want to know.
That's beautiful for the end. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks for taking so much time to explaining everything to us. I know there are going to be only a little people watching this right now, but the people who are watching that, they are really got some interesting views of you and some stuff maybe they never heard before.
If there's anything I can explain any further, let me know. And you're always welcome to stop by San Diego. It's not so bad.